Hello, I would like to share a brief video about loading a text CSV file to an Azure SQL database using Azure Data Factory. I know this is a common task, but I want to share some of the lessons learned along with a few recommendations. There are many ways to load a file into the database. This is just one approach. Again, Azure makes it quite easy to accomplish some of those common tasks. One of the few things I will be paying special attention to is security, making sure that the Azure Data Factory is granted permission only through kind of Azure identity and only to the resources that it needs. This is kind of one important item. And second item is using a stored procedure with table data type to load the data versus a traditional kind of text file to the table. Feedback is welcome as I build this, and then we'll go through it. So let me go ahead and get started on what I'm showing here is a sample CSV file. It has a few fields. I made sure to add a couple of uh, different data types like text, date, time, and also decimal in the text file. Those kind of will not make a difference, but will come in handy as we load the data into our SQL table. For destination, I have an accounts table. The accounts table is empty right now, and it has just a name, account number, create date, and balance. For the purpose of this demo, this is intended to be a kind of a one-to-one mapping between the text um, and the table. Next thing I am going to do is show you that the database and the server have already been created, and I'm gonna go through the process of creating the data factory. I'll click on the data factory. I have created kind of an empty data factory. Click on it. I will launch the studio. Takes it a minute to load. And now we will go through the process of creating the pipeline. We'll go to the author section, try to make this a little bit bigger. Uh, we'll go to the data set. I am now going to create a new data set. We'll move this to make it a little bit more visible. The, the file itself is present in an Azure Blob storage. This is where I have placed it. We'll click on the Azure Blob storage. It's of type delimited text. Click continue. Accounts, file, blob. I like to fully qualify the name. I will click on new. Okay. Then we'll say Azure Blob Store Demo. And this is fairly convenient. I'm able to just specify my subscription, my storage account name. I have already created the store, and then I can test the connection, make sure everything is working as expected. Click create. I will then click on the browse. I have created a folder under the container, call it input. This is the file, click OK, and then we can import the schema. In my case, the file itself is present, so I am able to import the schema directly. You can also do it from a sample file, but I will be just using that option. Click OK. Okay. Now if I make this a little bit bigger, you will see the schema has the name, account number, create date, and balance. And now this gives me the option for the source data itself. So we'll make this a little bit smaller, right? And there is an option here to preview data. This is convenient in case if you want to make sure that you are importing the right data. One thing to keep in mind that right now everything is imported as a string. We have not done any data qualification or kind of change. Next thing I am going to do is build my destination data set. And in this case, go into Azure, and it's an Azure SQL database. Click continue. Again, I will move this here so it can be a little bit visible. Click continue. Okay. Azure SQL database DB demo. Click on new. Azure SQL DB demo. And couple of things I want to highlight. So you are able to specify the subscription. This is my server name, the database. At this point, we have not shared the username and the password. And one kind of a cool features is you are able to find your system assigned managed identity. What that means is that particular service or that managed identity name will have access to the resources within the context of that database. So instead of sharing the username and the password and kind of having those float around, you are able to kind of grant that particular identity access to do the things that you want it to do. And that gives you a bit more granular um, control. So you're able to kind of disable it, deactivate it. And again, you're not controlled by a password kind of going around, just making it a little bit more structured and secured. We'll click on test connection. And we have not yet added the kind of user itself. So next step would be to take that managed identity and we are going to create and grant that user access in SQL database. I have now switched to my database itself. I will make this a little bit bigger. And the first statement I'm going to run is create user load file to DB. This particular user is the one that was created and for us by that managed identity name. So the proper syntax is create user and that name from external provider. We're not providing a password. We're just saying this is from an external provider, and we are going to kind of provision that user. Click run. Now I'm going to go back to my um, Azure Data Factory test connection. Okay, and now that the user has been created, it does have access to that database. There are still more permissions to come, but we will go through those in a little bit. I'm going to click create, um, and now I should see the table. I don't because I have not granted that particular user additional permissions. So I will go back to my kind of SQL, and then I will grant that user a data reader role. So I will alter the role and then give that user permissions to read from that particular database. You can narrow the scope even more, but in this case, I'm just going to highlight that that particular user can read any object in that database. I'm going to go back, click refresh, and now I do see the accounts table. Okay, I'm going to click OK. Perfect. Now I have my source, I have my destination. Okay, and on the destination, you can also see that I have the schema import, and I also have the different data types, date, time, and balance. Next step is going to be creating the pipeline itself. And we're going to keep it simple and just add one single activity, and that is the copy data. And we will name this pipeline copy or import account data. And we will name this copy account data. Okay. Give a little bit more space. I'm going to click on the source, and in the source is going to be my text file in that Azure Blob Store. Okay. Again, you have the option to preview the data. Okay, and we indeed make sure this is the data we want. And then in the sink, we have the database. Now, I'm going to do something a little bit different. For the write behavior, I am going to choose a store procedure. And the reason that I am doing that is in some cases, I want to manipulate the data in the table before I kind of insert it or maybe do some additional processing. If I do an insert or kind of an upsert, it will do a traditional just source to destination. But a case of a store procedure, it's going to give me a little bit more control to accomplish kind of cleaning the data, maybe truncating or kind of running some kind of queries, and it gives me a little bit more control. Now, creating the store procedure require us to do a couple of steps. So I'm going to switch to the Azure SQL database and walk you through those steps. First step, we are going to create a table type. And the proper way to do it is we're going to use this syntax create type, and we're naming this account type. And this is going to map exactly to this schema, the file schema. It doesn't have to be, but we're keeping it simple. The idea is the source file will come and will be passed as a table type through the store procedure. So this is the first step. I'm going to click run. Okay. Next step is I'm going to create a store procedure that will use this table type. So this is a store procedure. Make this a little bit smaller. Load account type, and it takes the account type as a parameter, as an input parameter. And then I'm going to process kind of the insert into the accounts table. And you will see this gives you more control over the data itself, because now that the information is in that table, you could you could select from it. You can do maybe some kind of conversion. You have a little bit more control from the SQL side before adding it to the accounts table. So in my case, I'm keeping it simple. I'm gonna go and create the accounts table. Insert the accounts table, I click run, and now I have both the store procedure and the account type. I will go back to my Azure Data Factory and I will click refresh. and I don't see the store procedure. Again, because that user still doesn't have permission to that store procedure. They have permissions to read from the database, but not to execute. And this is an important point because the flexibility that with user identity, you're able to define and refine the control for that store procedure or for that user. So I'm going to go back to my queries. I will go back to my SQL, and I will say give the user two things. First, I will give them execute permissions to that user that has been created. So I will highlight this, and that says allows them to execute that store procedure. Next thing, I'm going to also grant them permission for that type, that table type that I have created, the account type. So we'll do that as well. And then I will switch back, click refresh, and now I see the store procedure. Then I will click on the um, import parameter, and it will give me the table type. This is the table type that we have created and the table type parameter. And what happens is now we know that the data will be loaded to that particular table type through that parameter. Now I am ready to test my pipeline or this particular activity. I'm going to click on the debug, and what that will do, that simulate the process. It will take the information from the Azure Blob Store, um, execute the store procedure, and insert the data into the accounts table. Once this is completed, we will go back to SQL and run the query to view the data that has been inserted. Takes it a minute and it has succeeded. Now I'm going to go to the accounts table. I'll click run and you have the file. You have the account number, full name, balance and create date. It did respect the actual data type conversion. So that made my job a little bit easier. And that pretty much concludes our demo. Again, the idea is to highlight few things. Number one, leveraging user identity. I highly recommend that. This is a kind of capability of um, all of Azure resources. It gives you a finer control, so you don't have to have kind of passwords floating around. And second thing is leveraging a store procedure. It gives you more control over the data to do the things that you want to do. Thank you very much.